Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Mike Malott up against Yohann Lainesse, an all-Canadian affair coming up very soon. Now, this is another fight on your radar that you're just looking to continue that momentum, right? You're on a beautiful run of form. Do you feel that momentum behind you?
Yeah. I mean, I feel really confident going into this one, both in my preparation and the matchup itself. Like, he's a super tough guy, but I really like the way we line up against each other. Um, and then, yeah, you know, it's been wins for the last little while, so I plan on keeping that going. Have 8 wins on my record, and all 8 are stoppages. All 8 are first round stoppages, half by submission, half by knockout. So I think I have a lot of ways to win, and I expect to continue that knockout or finish streak.
How huge was the Contender Series for you? 39 seconds it took for you to put your opponent away. Did that feel like a validation for you of all your hard work and then getting to the
Uh,
UFC and doing it again?
yeah, absolutely. I couldn't believe it. You can kind of see it on my face if you go and watch it back. Like, I just get up, I'm shocked. I'm like, I've been working to get to the UFC since I was 13 years old, and I just 39 seconds later, I'm pretty certain I'm going to get a contract. So yeah, that was very validating.
Who were you looking up to when you were a kid?
George St. Pierre obviously was one of the big guys I looked up to the most as like a young Canadian kid. He was, he's the man. He's one of the greatest of all time. Absolutely incredible guy to look up to. I was a big Randy Couture fan back in the day too, man. He was always awesome to watch.
How do you feel about being matched up with a Canadian? Is that interesting, funny for you? Would you is that what you're used to?
No, I mean, Johan and I were supposed to fight before we both got to the UFC. We both fought for an organization called CFFC, and we both ended up getting called up to Contender Series, so it never happened. He was the champion, and that's what I was looking to get that belt. So I thought I was fighting him before the UFC. But yeah, it was an odd call to get. Um, we've trained together. We trained together about a year ago and met and laughed about how we were supposed to fight. And we're like, oh, well, we're the only two Canadians in the UFC or in the welterweight division. Like, no way, the UFC's putting us together. So let's train together and be buddies. And I've watched all his fights and been cheering for him and stuff. And then to get his name, I was like, okay, that's not the one I was expecting, but you know, he'll definitely be down for a good fight. So I'm excited in that way.
So he's generally a pretty good dude then.
Oh yeah, no, he's a good guy. I like him. Like I actually found out about the fight from him. So he told me about the fight. I was supposed to fight somebody else. I'd already accepted another fight for this same date. And then I got a message from him saying, "Hey man, the UFC offered me you. Feels a little bit weird, but I guess we're gonna do it." And I'm like, "What is he talking about? I thought I was fighting this other dude." And a couple minutes later, I get a text from my manager saying, "Hey, they switched up the opponent. It's Yohan Lainesse now. Didn't see the Canadian coming, but hey, we got one." I'm like, "All right, man. I've been out for too long. I just want to get a fight at this point."
What's your philosophy when it comes to opponents? Like, what's your approach? You hear so many different things. Some people say, they prefer to focus more on themselves. Some people rigorously like to pick apart their opponent's game, and other people like to get really hyped up and angry when they get in there. Like, what's your philosophy?
I don't like to overstudy my opponent. I just more so look for tendencies. I look for things that stand out, either things that they do often or things that they lean on for comfort, or see if there's any like obvious mistakes that they make. So I watched a bunch of his fights, and then I had my coaches watch a lot of his fights. So they tailored a lot of things to our opponent this camp, and then I have a few things that I see definitely working in this fight. So I didn't sit down and I wasn't watching his fights every single day. I'm focused more on myself anyway, but I see a few things that I'm pretty confident I'm going to be able to implement in this fight.
Your only loss on your record is against Mean Hakeem. He's not in your weight class anymore, but do you think you guys will ever meet again? And is it does it offer comfort that he's like a high level UFC guy and that's your only loss?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's a badass. He's an awesome fighter. Another good Canadian dude. We've become friends recently as well. We hadn't talked since we fought, and he messaged me either after Contender Series or after my debut or something like that, and just was like, "Hey, dude, sick to see you in the show. Congratulations, you looked awesome. Whatever." I was like, "Oh man, that's sick of you." So we've been messaging each other a little bit, like offered to have him out to train and stuff. Like there's 2 weight classes between us, so I don't ever see that one happening again. I hope I'm not having to fight any other Canadians moving forward. I hope this is the last Canadian, unless it's for like a belt or something. But no, I don't think Hakeem and I'll fight again.
How big are your ambitions in this sport? Because, on current form, it must feel like anything is possible. You're probably reaching the prime of your career now. Do you feel like you're in a hurry to achieve your goals while you're still young?
I don't have a whole lot of time to waste, but I also don't feel like I'm in a rush. I certainly see a world title in my future. I see the potential to be at the top of the UFC. Kind of sounds like a boring answer, but to be honest, like I focus a lot more on what's directly in front of me and what I can focus on now. I focus on the training camp. Like I set out kind of intentions every day for training, for weeks, for months, like break things down into different chunks. So of course I see UFC title in my future. Of course I see, a ton of money and going down as a great fighter in my future. But right now I'm just focused on Yohann Lainesse, and as soon as this fight's over, I'll be focused on just improving for the next one.
We still have a few guys in the division who are kind of like almost legendary figures of the old school, like Stephen Thompson, George Masvidal. Are those guys on your radar as guys you'd like to fight before they retire?
Yeah. I'd like to get some veterans in that like I've looked up to throughout my career and remember watching them when I was like first getting into the sport. That would be awesome.
What do you think of the top of the division right now? We've got a trilogy happening. How does that go? Usman, Edwards.
I think it'll probably go toward Usman just because of the momentum of that fight. But there are a lot of factors to consider. Like the fight was at elevation, and Kamaru Usman trains at elevation, and Edwards does not. So maybe when it's at a lower elevation, the fight will be a little more. It will favor Leon Edwards a little more. Yeah, I'm really not sure how that one will go.
Khamzat, I don't think is going to fight until after Ramadan, so maybe like the summer. But do you think it's got to be him versus Colby? And is he as good as everybody says he is?
I think him versus Colby's a fun fight. Yeah, I think he's a badass fighter.
And elsewhere in the division, Gilbert Burns and Masvidal, was that the right fight to make? I always thought Masvidal should fight McGregor, actually, because just huge money, huge buzz. But Burns Masvidal is pretty fun.
No, I agree with you that I thought they would match up Masvidal and McGregor. That would have been a sweet fight. That's just like a fun fight. It doesn't really make any sense, but it's just like let's watch these guys bang it out, especially because you have the McGregor Nate Diaz history, you have the Nate Diaz and Masvidal history, kind of just brings everything together. Thought that would have been a cool fight. But Burns and Masvidal is a badass fight, and you just kind of get like the pride of Florida in that fight as well, right?
It's interesting that you like to focus on what's in front of you, but we've seen how quickly things can happen for fighters. I mean, look at Khamzat or look at Alex Pereira. Things can happen so quickly if there's a guy in that top 15 to 10. If there's a narrative between you guys very quickly, things happen. So are you conscious of that? That like, is there anybody in kind of that 10 to 15 area that you might be gunning for in the next 2 fights, 3 fights?
I haven't looked at that as far as like where I actually want to be in the top 15 in the next few fights. I'm more so looking at, like I said, this fight and then the next 1 or 2 fights I have in mind. So I'm focusing on kind of the guys that I have realistically in front of me. I do expect to get another stoppage in this fight, and I know the UFC loves stoppages. So I think I keep this stoppage streak going and I get bumped up pretty quickly. But no, I don't have anyone in the top 15 I want to call out yet.
Where are you stronger than him? How does this fight end?
I think I'm stronger than him everywhere, to be perfectly honest. Like he's definitely the best on the feet for his own game, but I think my striking's definitely more. I know my striking's more technical than his. I think I have a better understanding of distance, and I have a more technical and tactical striking game than he does. However, he does hit very hard. He has knockout power, so that he has to be respected in that regard. And he's also tough. Like he can take a shot, he'll give a shot, and he looks strong. So I think those are kind of like his biggest things. He's tough, he's strong, he's not afraid to be in a tough fight. I think I'm a better striker than him. I also have knockout power. I think I have more knockouts than he does. I definitely think I have the biggest advantage being the grappling game, the jiu-jitsu game. I have 4 submissions, and there's like a big variety in how I get my submissions, right? I've had arm bars, I've had rear naked chokes, I've had guillotines, and I have some other stuff that I've never shown before in fights that I think is like some of my A game stuff. So I think I have like a lot more ways to win. And then the final one would be wrestling. I think I have a big wrestling advantage in this fight too. He'll probably be a little bit bigger than me when we get in there, and he'll probably be very strong early. I think he'll give me like heavy hips. I think he'll cover my head hard if I end up looking for a takedown. I think he'll pummel for underhooks and look to lift and explode. He's very explosive and strong. But you can only go pedal to the metal for so long before he starts, before you start fading. So I think, one, I'm extremely well conditioned right now. So I think that's another advantage, but I'm definitely more efficient than he is. I'm more tactical and efficient than he is. So while I have first round knockout power and have first round submission abilities, I think the longer the fight goes, the more it plays into my favor.
Nice breakdown. If it's all right with you, we're going to finish off with a little quick fire on your UFC colleagues. So who is the hardest hitter right now in the UFC?
Hardest hitter in the UFC right now? Probably Derek Lewis.
Best wrestler?
Best wrestler? Probably Gregor Gillespie.
Who's the funniest?
Who's the funniest? There's a few funny guys. More like social media stuff, like Derek Lewis is, again, I'm giving Derek Lewis props again, but he's hilarious. Jamal Hill's hilarious on from what I've seen. I'd say those are probably 2 of the funnier guys.
Who's the most annoying?
Who's the most annoying? Probably Colby.
Who's the best looking?
Who's the best looking? I don't know, man.
Who's the most stylish, the best dressed?
Probably like I've seen Usman seems like a snazzy dresser. I'm not a big fashion guy, but he seems like he knows how to put an outfit together.
Who's got the coolest tattoos?
The coolest tattoos, my boy Andre Feely.
And who would you most like to have dinner with?
Who would I most like to have dinner with? Just like to have dinner with my guys. I got a bunch of UFC friends that I haven't seen in a while. Uriah Faber, Cody Garbrandt, Andre Feely, all the team Alpha Male, miss all those guys. So if I were to have dinner with anybody in the UFC, it would be those boys.
Who's got the best fight IQ?
Who's got the best fight IQ? My buddy Gavin Tucker from Halifax probably has the highest fight IQ of anyone I've ever met. He's a huge fight nerd, and I love it.
Who is the most interesting female fighter?
Jasmine Jasdavicius, my teammate who's on this card with me.
And who has the best hands?
Who's the best hands? Song Yadong's got some insane boxing.
And who would you most want by your side in a street fight?
Who would I most want by my side in a street fight? I'll say again, one of my buddies again, Feely, because we've probably almost been there a couple of times together.
And finally, who would be your dream fight in any weight class, past or present?
I think like a younger BJ Penn would be a sick fight. He was so cool to watch back in the day, like awesome boxing, awesome jiu-jitsu. He was mean. He just had like a cool style, and I feel like he would have been the fun guy to fight.
It's a very cool answer, mate. Really good to see you. Good luck.
Thank you.
And good talk. Hopefully catch up with you again soon. Cheers.
Thank you, Andrew.
Watch the live coverage of UFC Fight Night. Krylov versus Spann on Sony Sports 10.2, Sony Sports 10.3 for Hindi, and Sony Sports 10.4 for Tamil and Telugu on the 26th of February at 5:30 a.m. in the Indian time zone.